Hi everybody, I've managed to get Anjali Mahto back, I'm so excited. It's essential that we cover the rest of your questions, so all of the questions that you asked before, which is why I didn't put out a call to action for questions, because I felt really guilty we didn't get round to them, and there she is, super efficient. And I haven't even sent these questions to Anjali, but I know she'll automatically know the answer because she's brilliant. Hello!
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. How are you doing?
Good. I was just explaining to everybody before you joined that I didn't put out a call to action for questions, even though I got some extra ones, because we had so many last time.
Yeah.
And then we basically said, you do need to come back and answer them.
Well, I'm very excited to be back, actually. I really enjoyed our chat last time, and I think we only got through about a third of the questions, maybe? Yeah.
I've got a third more here.
Amazing.
Last time we did a lot about rosacea and acne, and I'll put the link in below because it has a personal resonance to you because of your ongoing battle with your skin. This time we're going to do beauty myths and a few questions. And then I think maybe if I can get enough questions, we should do dry skin conditions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because I feel like not a lot of people speak about eczema, psoriasis, sensitivities, possible dermatitis and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons is probably because eczema, for example, is one of those conditions that's got so many different factors that are involved with it that it becomes a very complex issue to discuss. But I agree, actually, you don't see that much about dry skin.
No, the most common questions I always get are about essential sun damage, which a lot of people call aging, but I look at now and I go, oh, that's sun damage.
Yeah.
Sun damage and breakouts and acne are by far and away 75% of my questions. And then, but the people I feel who are most ignored are the people who I think fall into, and I might be wrong in categorizing eczema and dermatitis and psoriasis in the same category, but do you know what I mean by that category?
I do, actually, and I agree with you, because I would say the majority of what comes through clinic for me as well is acne, rosacea and pigmentation. They always feel like the big three that get a lot of attention. And then the psoriasis and the eczema, it's almost because they are such long-term chronic conditions, they get a bit forgotten about, which is a real shame in some ways.
So let's promise to come back for part 3. Okay. I love that I just booked you without asking you.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's do the beauty myths that we sort of hinted at last time and didn't get around to doing.
Yeah.
Let's start with fragrance, because this is the one we teased and didn't talk about. Fragrance in skincare, good or bad?
Oh, so this is the thing, isn't it? It feels like they have suddenly become two camps of it's evil or it's totally fine, don't worry about it. And like everything in life, the answer is clearly the boring middle ground of it's kind of okay for some people and it's kind of okay, well, not so okay for others. So my actual dermatology hat answer to that would be, I think fragrances have become quite demonized for whatever reason in recent months. And in actual fact, the vast majority of people like fragrances in their skincare. It makes them feel like they're having a luxury experience with what they're using, and it doesn't cause a problem. The people that have a problem with fragrance are those that tend to have a chronic inflammatory skin condition. So people that are prone to rosacea, eczema, or even psoriasis, for example, are people that probably need to be a little bit more cautious. We do know that fragrances are a common cause of allergy that we see in dermatology clinics, but the vast majority of the population can get on with it just fine.
Essential oils in skincare.
So essential oils is another one. I mean,
this is where I feel that fragrance has been demonized, is I think people think that essential oils and fragrance are all the same thing as well.
That's right. And I think one of the reasons for that is we often talk about fragrances being an irritant, and essential oils for some people can also be an irritant. But it's a similar kind of answer here is what I would say, is that for the majority of people, it's probably fine. But for people that have got a problem with their skin barrier, so, you know, things aren't functioning quite the way that they are, there might be a bit of low-grade inflammation. Those are the people that are likely to have issues.
Okay. Okay. So erring on the side of caution, if you feel that you have an impaired barrier function, avoid fragrance in skincare. What are the symptoms of an impaired barrier function before it becomes clinical?
So I think if you're applying skincare and it's causing burning, tingling, sensitivity, if you're prone to redness or flaking of the skin, I think all of those are actually good things to look out for. Now, some people have got skin conditions that are up and down. So they might suffer, for example, with eczema. But if their eczema is under good control, it might be that they can tolerate a fragrance or an essential oil. But when they're in the middle of a flare-up, they're not. So one of the things that I think can be quite useful is if you fall into that category where you're not sure, rather than buy a new product and smear it everywhere, maybe do a little test patch on your skin first. So a good place is kind of behind the ear or the inside of the forearm, a little area, leave it for 24 hours. And if there is no redness, burning, tingling, irritation, you're probably good to go all over.
Okay. Would you start here and then go to here?
I would probably test here because the skin here is probably slightly more similar to your facial skin, which is where we apply most of our products.
Okay. One of the questions I didn't actually have here, but it's just come up and comes up so often for me, alcohol in skincare.
Yes, and there are lots of different types of alcohol in skincare. So if we're talking about ethanol can be an irritant. It can be found in a lot of kind of skincare products that are made for acne prone skin, for example, like toners. So it creates a quick drying effect when you put it onto the skin. So again, if you have got oily or acne prone skin, you're probably going to be okay with it. But at the other end of the extreme, if you've got rosacea or you've got problems with your skin barrier, i.e. there is redness, flaking, dryness, soreness, or any of that, you probably don't want to be leaping in with using something like that. However, there are a lot of alcohols that are there to emulsify products and also to bind products almost together so things fit together. And I think we just lump all alcohols together as bad. It is actually, in reality, a lot more complex than that. And then it's not just simply looking at the ingredient name, because I know it's become really fashionable to like look at ingredients, stick their name into like an inky list and think, okay, that's good, that's bad. It doesn't work that way. It makes such a difference where on the ingredients list it is, what the concentration is, what the rest of the formulation is like. So I think to label alcohol as just bad, again, we need to be careful of blanket statements.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think originally that argument that alcohol was bad came from the idea of the old-fashioned toners. Yeah. Without mentioning brands, it was the ones that when you toned your face and if you opened your eyes too quickly, your eyes watered. Yeah. And I always say now, a lot of the questions at this time of year are about alcohol in sunscreens. Yeah. And I always say the brands you're talking about are using alcohol to disperse the sunscreen. And then they're also loaded with emollients and humectants to balance the temporary drying effect. So yes, it's about the formulation, not about the individual ingredient.
Is what matters. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Are oils good for the skin or not?
So this is an interesting one, and I
love that I can make you go, ugh.
So I tell you why, because I am fully aware that I am going to have slightly my own biases as a result of some of the stuff that I see in clinic, plus also my own background of skin issues. So I don't like oils on acne prone or oily skin. And I know that people will say, oh, but not all oils are comedogenic. And, you know, if you look at comedogenicity ratings, that, you know, these ones are fine, these ones are not. The problem with comedogenicity ratings is they're not that accurate. You know, something could be potentially comedogenic in a low concentration, but not in a high concentration. Or something could be comedogenic by itself, but then when you mix it with a whole load of other things, it's not. So again, we're talking about full formulation that really matters. But one thing I do see practically in clinic is young women that have got lots and lots of little comedones or little blackheads or bumps underneath the skin. And when I take apart their skincare routine and say, what exactly are you using in the morning and the evening? Describe everything. There is always an oil involved. So I don't like oils for acne-prone skin. However, I think that they do have a role in people that have got very dry skin, or mature or postmenopausal skin, where you need that extra hydration. So I think it comes a lot to the individual skin type, but I don't like the cleansers therefore oil is good for oily skin. I feel like what I see are the people that have got all of the comedones as a result of that.
Yeah, it's my experience as well. I have to say, I have friends that absolutely love oils, and they're always my friends that have what I call poreless skin, i.e. chronically dry skin.
Dry. No, it's so
And they
true.
absolutely need it. And they
Yeah.
say their skin drinks it up. Whereas I put an oil on my skin on occasions when I do it, say after flying or something like that. And it feels nice. And then the next morning I cleanse it off. My skin's just as dry as it was before. Whereas that doesn't happen with a classic water-based emollient for me. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I have one or two for emergencies. I've got a little vitamin D one that I quite like. And
Okay.
there is a Medicate one, the anti-redness or the redness relief one that I quite like. They're almost like waters though. I don't know what the chemistry is behind them. They're very
Yeah.
clever, but otherwise I'm not a fan, I must
No,
admit.
and I think if you've got oily skin, the last thing you want is for your skin to feel more oily. You know, like talking about, you know, certainly the acne girls. Like I just don't know why one would put oil on their skin. But I totally understand if you've got dry skin, you're absolutely right, poreless, nothing to see there. Perfect for those skin types.
It's that argument, isn't it, that only oil dissolves oil.
Yeah.
That's the argument.
Except yeah.
Now, I've got a question for you as well, because this one always really baffles me. And again, I
Yeah.
tend to be split between my friends who've got skin like myself, which is fairly balanced, a little bit dry, and my friends who have drier skin. I find it really strange that people use acid in the morning.
Like, so you're talking about AHAs or BHAs in the morning in general?
Yes. And this, I'm asking you because A, you're a dermatologist, and B, because you've battled your skin. So acids are an important part of your routine.
100%.
Should acids be used in the morning or at night or both? And if you do use an acid in the morning, how do you go on to protect your skin if you're exfoliating your skin throughout the day?
So I think that's a really good question, actually. And I think a lot of it comes down to tolerance. And I think the second thing is to recognize that if you're using an acid either morning or evening, it's going to cause sensitivity if you're using it to the sun, if you're using it regularly. And it also depends what format of that acid you're using, whether it's a cleanser, so, you know, it's only coming into short contact with the skin, versus using something like a toner or a serum, which you would leave on the skin. So I like acids in skincare for acne, oily, blemish-prone skin in the form of a cleanser in the morning. And I think that's super helpful to do. But I don't think it comes naturally to me to say use an acid toner in the morning. I always say use that at nighttime. And actually thinking about it, why do I do that? It probably logically makes no sense in some ways, because if you're using AHA consistently, you're going to be sun sensitive regardless of morning or evening, and you're going to be wearing your sunscreen anyway. But I do feel like, you know, your AHA toners are for the nighttime, but your cleansers morning and evening works really well.
I tend to put, and I don't know if this is just me overthinking it. I always feel that skincare in the daytime is about protection. So if you think about you cleanse, you have a little bit of hydration, you add your antioxidant, you add your SPF, your makeup. And I always feel if you then put on a general, not dabbing on the occasional breakout, a general exfoliating acid, throughout the day, what you're doing is shedding your SPF more quickly, I think, my makeup more quickly. So for me, I always feel like putting an acid on in the morning somehow breaks down the protective layers you're putting on. But I might be wrong. Sally Hughes, a mutual friend of mine, and I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning him, she loves the glow. One of those ladies with 0 pores, chronically dry skin, the most beautiful skin you've ever seen. She loves the glow of an acid toner every morning. And she says it doesn't affect her makeup or her SPF or anything. But for me, if I use an acid in the morning, I feel like everything starts to roll and shed off. Or maybe my skin's just very efficient at exfoliating. I don't know.
You know, it could be that, but I wonder if it's also to do with the strength of the actives that you're using overnight. So if you are piling a lot of actives on overnight, you probably do need to give your skin a break in the morning. So I'm the same, actually. I dollop loads of stuff on at nighttime, and in the morning I'm like, oh, I'm a bit dry here now because I put so much product on that I then don't want to use something that's going to sting the skin or tingle or cause burning or irritation. So I do want, I mean, so maybe I'm trying to think, why do I do this? But I think actually I do tend to also go for actives at night whilst you're sleeping overnight, and then the morning is the recovery time.
Yes. All protection and recovery in the day and actives at night. Another question, somebody, I love my followers. They're so smart and they adore you. Should we demonize SLS?
No. No is the answer. Poor SLS and SLES get such a bad rep in skincare. And to be fair, in a lot of clinical studies, in higher concentrations, they are often used in skin models to cause irritation. But again, in actual fact, at the concentrations that we use in our leave-on products like moisturizers or our rinse-off products like cleansers, They are safely controlled. The people that have problems with SLS are, again, that same group, often with chronic inflammatory skin conditions, because SLS can disrupt that barrier function of the skin. And once you disrupt that barrier function, you lose more water and you can cause dryness and irritation.
And somebody's just asked, what is SLS?
Sodium lauryl sulfate or sodium lauryl sulfate. And they're
commonly found in detergents, essentially, and in cleansers, and they were and also toothpaste, and they were demonized because for a while in fact in some products they're replaced with a sort of coconut derivative. I don't really think it's any less dehydrating to your skin. I think it's about not demonizing the ingredient. I think it's about finding the emollients and the gentle hydrators that balance it out in a skin product. For me, it's very interesting. I did a live with lovely Stephen Elaine Coe, who's a formulating chemist, last week.
I love him.
I love him. And he gave the same argument with alcohol. He said the studies that prove that alcohol is dehydrating to the skin are done in clinic on a tiny patch of skin where the dosage of alcohol is basically 24 hours for 7 days a week. And they were saying if you compared it to a real life study of frontline key health workers who were using alcohol hand gels 24/7 in a working environment, they had less irritation than proven at a clinical level in a trial where you're literally pushing the skin to the absolute limit. And I think it's the same with SLS as well. Yeah.
That's right. And I do think that sometimes what we do forget as well is that the clinical trials are not a reflection of true life and how we use these products in true life. So whilst it's great to have, like, you know, we need to have some kind of studies, but, you know, models on cell cultures and skin cells in a little dish are not the same as you applying your skincare on your face or your back or your chest or wherever it might be.
Yes, for anybody listening, if they see these studies and it says they're in vitro, it means they're done on cell cultures in a petri dish. And if it's done in vivo, it's done in real life skin. So that's the important thing to bear in mind. Right, do we need an SPF inside, Anjali?
So SPF is only a marker of protection against ultraviolet B light from the sun. And sunlight is made up of multiple wavelengths of light. So you've got UVA, which is the deep array, which classically we say causes aging of the skin. UVB, which we say causes burning or redness of the skin. UVC, which we don't worry about because it doesn't penetrate the Earth's atmosphere. And then infrared A and visible light. Now, if we're talking about sunscreen in general, do we need to wear it indoors? Well, if you're sitting and you're working by a window all day, UVA will penetrate window glass. None of the other wavelengths will. So if you're really worried about skin aging and you're sitting by a window indoors, working from home all day, you might want to put your sunscreen on. If you are worried about other wavelengths of light, like visible light and screens, which I know a lot of products push this idea of, if you have blue light coming from your screen or your device, or you're sending all day in front of Zoom or your laptop, you must wear your sunscreen with blue light protection. That is a myth, because that kind of level or dose of blue light that you're getting from any of your devices is not comparable to the sun, which is actually what we need to worry about. So SPF indoors, if you're worried about UVA and aging, yes, you're not going to get burnt from sitting inside and wearing a sunscreen. So it depends, I guess, how worried you are about the skin aging.
Okay. I remember when we first started talking about UVA to journalists, I always remember they show that classic picture of the trucker in America.
That's
where
right.
One side of his face has been by an open window driving all day and the other side hasn't. And the difference was astounding. But obviously that's by a window, 24/7, well, not 24/7, but 12 hours a day driving. And often you see people that drive get a lot more sun damage on one side of their arm as well,
100%, don't they? Or the backs of the hands. That's something that I do see, actually. Some people will come in and say, my two hands, they look entirely different. And when you look at them, they're covered in sunspots on one side and literally nothing on the other because of an open window and arm kind of hanging out.
Collagen supplements. Food supplements for skin health, and then we're going to go on to bust some myths about food causing acne as well.
Sure. So collagen supplements, so the science behind collagen supplements, I'm going to say the science, is that collagen is a naturally found protein in our skin. And collagen type 1 and type 3 are the main proteins in our skin. There's about 20 plus different collagen types, but 1 and 3 are the main ones that we need to think about. And the idea is that if you take a collagen supplement, it somehow ends up in your stomach, through your gut, and ends up into your skin, giving you more collagen in your skin. In actual fact, what happens is collagen is a protein. So if you have a collagen drink or a collagen tablet, that will be broken down into its constituent amino acids that make up that protein. And then those amino acids float around and travel around to areas of the body where protein regeneration is needed. There are a number of small studies that show that if you take a collagen supplement, the collagen will end up in your skin and thicken up your skin and help anti-aging. The problem with a lot of those studies is, firstly, they are very small numbers, so you don't know how accurate the study is. Secondly, they're often industry funded. So the person that has designed the supplement has created the study. The third thing is that there are also lots of confounding things that one needs to think about. If you're the kind of person that has got excess money to be spending money on collagen supplements, which do not come cheap, chances are you're probably also the kind of person that is wearing sunscreen, that is using a retinol, that is following a healthy diet, and is probably thinking about their stress and their sleep. So then it becomes really difficult to tease out whether it's actually that supplement that's making your skin better, or all of those other factors that come into play. And let's just assume that the studies themselves are right and they do work and there are no confounders. What a lot of these studies show is that they thicken up the skin by maybe like 0.01 millimeter or by like 7%. The question then becomes, let's just assume they were working. Would you notice a 0.01 millimeter improvement in a wrinkle around your eye? Probably not. So is it clinically significant anyway? So my answer would be there are lots of tried and tested methods to look after your skin.
Oh, I've your back, don't worry.
And oh, excellent. To look after your skin. And actually, you know, collagen supplements are one area where I don't think I would invest the money. And if you look at beauty supplements in general as well, they always contain really the same kind of common nutrients. So you'll always find a bit of vitamin A, a bit of omega-3, some zinc, some selenium. They're usually the big players that go in. And vitamin C, you know, whilst all of those things are really important and integral for skin health, there is no evidence that taking more of it, if you don't have a deficiency, is going to make your skin quality better. So my advice is always a diet that is good for your skin is a diet that is good for your general health, you know, and it's good for your heart and your lungs and your kidneys and all the rest of it. So I'm not a big fan of beauty supplements, actually. I think there are better ways that we can look after our skin.
I always say to people, unless you've got one of those lives where you're sort of dismissing food groups for whatever reason, and we'll go on to that, you should be getting all of the protein you need from your diet anyway. So, and it's essentially your body will use it as a source of protein. And the only time I ever say that you might consider supplementing is if you're a vegan and it's hard to get certain nutrients from your diet. Right. But even then you can get them from the kind of bog standard shelf. You don't need a specific one. Let's talk about some of the myths around. And I know that you're really heavily invested in this because of the food shaming with people that suffer from their skin.
Yeah.
Does diet, back in the olden days, it was chocolate. Does a diet in any way or what you eat contribute to acne? Huge subject.
It's a huge subject. And the answer is such a complicated one because basically the scientific evidence has like swung one way, then the other way, and then one way. So back in like pre-50s, you know, dermatologists used to say, actually, sugary foods and chocolate and greasy foods cause acne, don't eat them. And then a couple of studies came along that said, nope, there's no link. And then literally overnight, textbooks were changed. And then dermatologists point blank said, of course it doesn't. You can eat what you like, you can drink what you like. And over the past 10 years or so, I think there's been a massive renewed interest. And I think it's come along with kind of the growth of wellness as well that we're seeing, that people have taken a real interest in what can I do to control my diet that might help my skin. And actually, if you look at the scientific data, for a small select group of individuals, dairy might have a part to play. And from the data that we've got, it seems to be that skimmed milk is more of an issue than full fat milk for a number of reasons that we don't fully understand. Now, that's not to say that everybody that has acne should cut out dairy. What I tend to say in clinic to patients is that if you're the kind of person that every time you have milk or you have a dairy product and you break out, you may be sensitive. But if you are eating or not eating these products and your skin is still doing whatever your skin wants to do, it's not your diet that is playing a part in this. This is your hormones and your genetics. So I think small select group, yes, there is a role for dairy. Vast majority makes no difference. And I think the big thing is that I have lots of vegan patients. If it was as simple as just cutting out dairy, I wouldn't have vegan patients, and I most certainly do. So it's much more complex than that. The sugar story is much more complicated though. And there's a lot of data coming out in the past 10 years or so that suggests that diets that are high in refined sugars, so high GI index foods, might drive acne, because if you get a peak in your blood sugar levels or your blood glucose, you then get a peak in another hormone called insulin. And then if you get a peak in insulin, you get another peak in another hormone called IGF-1. And IGF-1 can increase the size and the activity of your oil glands potentially. The difficulty with the sugar studies as well is it's very hard to do nutrition studies accurately, because they often rely on people saying, what did you eat in the last 6 months? Most of us can't remember what we had for dinner last week, let alone what we had 6 months ago. So there's an inaccuracy there. The second thing, aside from that, is there are so many other confounding things, because if you're eating sugar, you might be eating other things as well. How do you know it's a sugar and it's not something else? So just by nature of clinical design of nutritional studies, it's really hard to tease out individual ingredients. And I recently took apart a post on one of my Instagram, actually. It was about a diet and acne post, and it's from a really reputable journal whose conclusion was that sugar may have a part to play. But if you tore that study apart, that's not what the study said at all. So you have to take these things with a little bit of a pinch of salt. The other issue that I'm seeing in clinic is a lot of people are thinking they should cut out dairy because that's good for their skin and that's good for their acne. And then they're switching to alternative milks, and oat milk is really popular. Oat milk has got a higher GI index than dairy does. So if we are worried about GI index, you probably want to be going for almond milk, not oat milk. And I know this is like really kind of first world problems, but it's stuff that you do need to think about.
That might also explain why the skimmed milk has more of an effect than the full fat milk, because the full fat milk will slow the release of the sugars, the milk sugars, into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Just thinking.
Because
the way of, the minute you take the fat out of something, the sugar begins to deliver quickly and you get more of an insulin spike. That's just my basic nutritional knowledge though, so I might be wrong.
That's actually spot on though. That is actually one of the theories behind why that might be the case actually. The second one, less in the UK but more in the US, is whether or not by removing the fat you're removing some of the hormone content as well. That comes from the milk hormones that are there to basically feed baby calves. Therefore it might also be driving growth, particularly growth of oil glands as well. But I think that your explanation actually, it's more the kind of generally accepted, when removing fat you leave the carbohydrate behind.
I'm going straight away from this afterwards to Google the link between sugar, insulin and IGF. I'm absolutely loving this, because by the way, can I just say at this point, anybody here that's watching over any period of time that doesn't follow Anjali, start following her. Hold up your book, because I asked Anjali to do this last time and she didn't have it to hand. So what you need to do is, this is Anjali's brain condensed into a book. Hold it up.
Oh God, you know, I really hate doing this kind of thing.
No.
That's behind my book.
So it's called the Skincare Bible. Who published it and when did they publish it?
Penguin in 2018, I think it's 2 years, or is it 3?
Well, that's gone quickly.
It's either 2 or 3 years since it came out. I think it's 2 years.
Okay, so essentially what it is it's all of that forward-thinking clinical dermatology, but condensed down into a language that you and I can understand. So somebody's just said, Rebecca, such a good book. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Do we need eye products?
So this is an interesting question, and it can be answered in a number of ways, which is always the thing. So in general terms, most eye creams, not all, but most eye creams are essentially the same ingredients as a good facial moisturizer. So there is no reason provided you're not using products that have got salicylic acid in your moisturizer. It's a normal, bland, sensitive skin, fragrance-free moisturizer. You can put it around your eyes. You're going to have no issues. You don't need a separate eye cream. But if you are concerned about the development of fine lines or wrinkles around the eye, which, to be honest, your eyes do start showing the signs of aging quicker than any other part of the body because the skin there is so thin, then actually wearing a sunscreen around the upper and the lower eyelids in the morning is really important. But using a gentle retinol around the eye can also be of benefit. So I think there is benefit in eye retinol. I think there's a little bit of benefit in caffeine-containing products that can slightly depuff temporarily. I think there is a slight benefit in some peptides. It does depend on the peptides that you're using to use and plump up the eye area. But if you're talking simply about an eye cream that's got nothing special in it, you may as well just use your facial moisturizer.
I always say that I think back in the day, because I'm older than you, that people used to have an eye product in a routine because the face cream was quite heavy and quite occlusive. So you wouldn't want to put it around your eye because it would feel gunky and probably lead to puffiness. Now we have serums. If your serums go around your eyes and don't cause any irritation, then really what's the point of an eye product?
I mean, I'm inclined to agree.
Can we just say quickly though, what's your favourite eye SPF? Because we did mention this last time and I think it's really important.
Yeah, so I actually really like the SkinCeuticals Mineral UV Eye Defense because even though it's tiny, I think a little bit goes a long way, and I like the tint in it as well.
And I also think it gives this really nice soft focus finish as well because it's slightly tinted. The only reason I pull that face is because I'm very wary of the fact that it's expensive, but I absolutely love that product. I really do.
Yeah, and to be honest, most mineral sunscreens you probably could use around the eye. A chemical one you wouldn't want to, but most mineral sunscreens shouldn't cause irritation around the eye area.
Which is, for anybody watching that's not sure, that's something that has zinc or titanium dioxide in, by the way.
Yeah.
Something specifically I think I'm prone to, and you're prone to for a different reason.
Yeah.
What about under eye dark circles? Is there anything that really tackles them?
So the question here is, what is the cause of that under eye dark circle?
Well, you and I have different causes.
That's right. So our treatments are going to be very, very different as well. So generally speaking, what you want to look at is the underlying kind of almost the anatomy or the physiology of the eye. Is that dark circle there because it might be a genetic or a racial thing? So you see dark circles, periorbital melanosis is the derm word for it, in Black and Asian skin. And that's very, very common. You can also have genetic factors where if you've got a family member, usually parent, mum or dad, that has got dark circles or a little bit of hollowing around the eye, you may well develop that as well. So there's that. There are also medical conditions that can cause darkness around the eye. So if you've got eczema around the eye, if you've got hay fever, you're constantly rubbing your eyes at this time of year, all of those thyroid problems can all lead to issues around the eye area. So you want to look, are there any of those? And then there is the natural aging process of the skin and the face. As all of us get older, underneath our skin, we have lots and lots of little fat pads that give our skin volume. And as we get older, those fat pads become thin. They're not as volumized as they used to be. And what will end up happening is if that fat pad underneath the eye becomes thin, it then exposes the underlying muscle below the fat. So what happens is when light hits your skin, it's not actually hitting the fat anymore. It's going through the fat and it's hitting the muscle. And muscle has got a really good blood supply. It's dark. So it creates a dark appearance under the skin. So if that's the issue, the only way to treat that is to volumize it by putting a little bit of either filler or a little bit of fat from another part of the body directly underneath the eye area. So I guess the answer is it depends on what's going on. And then if it's purely just a skin darkening issue, there are skincare ingredients that can be helpful, like vitamin C, like kojic acid, and even kind of prescription products that contain a little bit of vitamin A in them.
Oh, and you can use them up around the eyes at a prescription strength. Could you use hydroquinone around the eye on, so, what did you call it?
Periorbital melanosis.
Thank you.
Around the eye, darkness, basically. So question to, can you use things like hydroquinone, or I think I saw someone say, can you use tretinoin around the eye area as well? if I was giving a public safety health message, which I'm going to have to caveat with, I would say absolutely not. It's really dangerous to do so. But if you are under the care of somebody that looks after skin and they are able to explain to you how to do it in a safe way, you certainly can use a little bit of tretinoin around the eye. You just have to be very careful with how it's done. The reason why we don't like to give this kind of generic advice, a bit like the fragrance advice, is if somebody has a bad reaction because you go off and you do exactly what I've said and you cause more damage to your skin, you are not going to thank me for that. So I just have to be really careful with that. But in actual fact, you could. You just need appropriate advice as an individual.
It's very interesting, isn't it? I think you obviously, as a medical professional and a clinical dermatologist, have to err on the side of caution, because there will always be somebody that thinks, oh, if that's good for me, I have to apply lots more and very close. And so then you suddenly layering all these actives around your eyes, and this, especially as you age, you know, the skin around the eyes is so incredibly paper fine. It really is.
That's right. And I think the other thing as well, and I don't know what's driving this, but it's something I'm seeing, is that people are also like, there always are instructions with the products, the manufacturer's safety guidelines almost of like, use this amount or leave X product on for this long before you wipe it off again. And the one that I'm seeing so much of is the, you know, the ordinary AHA, BHA peeling solution. Mm-hmm. People are leaving it on for like hours. And then they're getting so many problems with like irritant contact dermatitis or eczema because it's not meant to be left on for that long. And I don't know who's promoting this idea of just like leave it on forever, but I feel like I've seen a lot of people doing that recently.
I think it's because they're not reading the instructions and it looks like a serum to be left on the skin. Because, I mean, because it's you know, if you think about masks, they tend to be quite thick and then you put them on and then you wash them off because you couldn't go out. I mean, you wouldn't go out with this one because it's red, but technically it looks like a drop of serum. So you could put it on and sleep in it overnight and not realize it's supposed to. I think the initial time it's supposed to be left on the skin is under 10 minutes.
I think that's right. I think it's either I think it's about 5 minutes or so. 5 to 10
I
minutes.
actually really like it as a peel. I think it's a really lovely one. But I mean, I've got the toughest, I always say I've got the toughest old skin known to mankind. And even 20 minutes would be my limit one for it. So crazy.
No. Entirely agree.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you another one now. What about neck creams?
Okay, so there's not a massive difference in the skin of your face and the skin of your neck. So I think as a general rule, one thing that you could do is if you are using actives to the face, you can bring them down to the neck as well. And there's no harm in doing that. The only comment I would make if you do that, particularly if you're using retinols at nighttime, is for some people, the skin of the neck can actually be more sensitive than the skin of the face. So I think what you have to do is be even more cautious with initiating a strong active. So it's not that you can't use it, but I think you have to go very slowly, very cautiously. And if you are going to use a vitamin A on the neck, then afterwards, make sure you're moisturizing. So 20 minutes later, good moisturizer to make sure that you're reducing the risk of that redness, that peeling, and that irritation.
Yeah. The only reason people ask that is because along with the eyes, it's the specialist area that ages fast. And it worries me that skincare companies just jump onto that and want to market an extra product. Like you said, you can use the same product and buffer it out with a moisturizer.
That's right. The other thing as well, though, I think, you know, that whole idea of tech neck that we're all getting, I think it's a real thing as well, you know, where people are getting lines from having your head down all the time and you start to get too deep lines here from a much younger age. So it's also being aware of that. And if you are the kind of person that spends all day on your phone, you're answering emails, you're doing work, you might want to think about how you're holding your phone as well. I mean, I know it's not practical to have it out here in front of you, but that kind of motion and constantly being like that, I mean, it's not great for your posture, but it's not great for your neck either.
Although, and whenever I see young people with lines on their neck, the first thing I always say to them is you need to try deep cleansing your neck. You'd be amazed the amount of people that don't cleanse their neck properly and finish here. And then, I mean, I know Clarisonic has just sort of sadly said goodbye to the world, but I always think that when back in the day, whenever I used to use a Clarisonic, I'd always be amazed at how grubby my neck was. Sorry, too much information. But sometimes we just forget to cleanse our necks.
It's funny actually, so at night time I use a micellar water first to remove my makeup before I do my second cleanse, and I take it all the way down to my neck and the top of my chest, and I agree, like I'm just like, whoa, I didn't realize, like I thought my neck was quite clean and I thought like my face was quite clean, but
you and I spend a lot of time in a very polluted city and you just forget about all those micro particles of and we've both got fairly long hair and it sits in your hair and then sits around your neck.
That's very true.
Now you just mentioned there, are you a fan of double cleansing and what do you like to double cleanse with?
I am actually. I think double cleansing is useful for people that wear a lot of makeup. And I have always worn a lot of makeup, historically, just because.
You really don't wear a lot of makeup.
You wouldn't catch me without any kind of like base normally. And I think it's because if you've had like, acne since your teenage years, you're just so used to covering it up that even when your skin gets better, it's like getting dressed, putting my makeup on. I wouldn't think of not doing it. So I think double cleansing is useful for people that are wearing a lot of product. The second thing is, if you've got a good skincare routine and you are also in the morning putting on your antioxidant serum, you've got your moisturizer, you've got your sunscreen. Sunscreen is made to sit on the skin surface. It is not meant to be absorbed into the skin surface. You actually do need to make sure that not only have you removed all the products that you've applied to your skin, but also the dirt, the sweat, the pollution, the grime that your skin has come into contact with during the day. So I think that there is benefit in doing that. Now, clearly, if you're somebody that doesn't wear any makeup at all, you could probably get away with a single cleanse. But I like a micellar water first to remove my eye and my face makeup. And then I like a foaming cleanser afterwards to then remove any residue after that.
And if you want to know what Anjali's products were, I'll link the video below. And at the very end of that last video, you can tap through it. You can see her list of must-have products. The best news is that most of them are very reasonably priced as well.
Yeah.
Should you apply skincare to damp skin? Another one of those myths that's come along.
Yes, there is this idea, isn't there, that if your skin's slightly damp, you will get slightly better absorption. I mean, again, my personal recommendation is to not do that. I would dry appropriately and then I would put your skin on, partly because let's just say there is better absorption. Some of these products you don't want better absorption of because they're going to irritate your skin. Remember, your skin is a barrier. It's there to keep good things in and bad things out. The minute you start disrupting that barrier, it does mean that not only does more water get out, but more things that you're putting on the surface get in. So there is a higher risk of irritation. So I think as a general rule, unless you're super, super dry and it's just a bit of moisturizer on damp skin that you're talking about, I think everything else you dry off properly and then you put your layers on.
The only time I ever apply anything to really damp skin, I think, is if I'm using quite a sort of rich body emollient and I want it to thin out.
Yeah.
So if you've got damp legs when you come out of the shower, I quite like that effect when it emulsifies slightly and turns into a milk. But otherwise on my face, I mean, the face dries so quickly, it doesn't really bother me. Is there any such thing as fungal acne?
So fungal acne is not acne, but there is a condition called Pityrosporum folliculitis, which has commonly become known as fungal acne. So fungal acne is not a diagnosis in itself. You will never find it in a textbook. You will never find derms talking about it. But there is a condition where you can get an overgrowth of the yeast and the natural skin microbiome in some people, where it can lead to spots that might be misdiagnosed as acne. So fungal acne seems to be very common in sweaty areas, more common in the summer months, tends to be more common in males than females, according to the data that we've got, and also in people that live in hot, humid climates. And you tend to see it on the face, the back, and the chest, the areas we've got a high density of oil glands or sebaceous glands. But the condition isn't due to acne, it's due to this bug overgrowing in the hair follicles. So yes, it is a condition that exists. It's not a medical diagnosis because it's actually Pityrosporum folliculitis that you're talking about. And it's not that common. It can coexist with acne, and it can be triggered by people that are using antibiotics long term for their acne.
Because the antibiotics affect the microbiome of the skin. Is this?
That's right.
Loads of people have come on and said, do clinical dermatologists believe in the importance of microbiomes on the skin?
100%. There's absolutely no doubt that just like your gut has got its own microbiome, so does your skin. And that skin microbiome we're still learning so much about, because your skin microbiome is not the same all over your body. The bacteria and yeast and viruses and fungus that live on oily areas like your face are very, very different to, for example, what we consider the dry areas of the body, like the back of the elbow. So yes, the skin microbiome is important. What we don't yet know, because it's such early days of research, and also carrying out skin microbiome research for practical reasons is quite difficult, is we still don't 100% understand how it has a part to play in health and disease. So it does, but to say that we can suddenly alter the microbiome, so probiotic skincare is a good example of this. We just do not have the science to do that yet. You know, probiotic skincare, as far as I'm concerned, it's a lot of clever marketing, but I suspect what's doing the trick is all of the emollient type agents in the product rather than the dead bacteria which normally go into the product.
When we were talking about the fungal acne, I presume it's just treated with topical antifungals, is it? So
yeah, so
miconazole, ketoconazole, something like you would use on a scalp.
That's right. So as a home measure, what you could do if you think you might have it is Head and Shoulders shampoo. So you can use that as a face wash or a body wash. But in actual fact, if it's quite extensive, it doesn't respond to the topical treatments, and you do need oral medications. So I tend to use something called oral itraconazole, and it would be a tablet I would do for 7 days. But I think in actual fact, I think it's overdiagnosed, and a lot of people don't have it. And actually what they do have is traditional acne, or it coexists with acne. So even if you treat it, the acne still needs treatment as well.
Okay. Thoughts on retinaldehyde, which is a relatively new ingredient and is the final metabolic pathway between retinol and retinoic acid.
Yeah. So I think actually retinal or retinaldehydes it's great to see more retinaldehyde products actually, because as you very rightly said, in terms of our skin using products, retinol esters are like the weakest, and then retinols, then retinaldehydes, and then you've got your prescription retinoids. And I think what I would probably say is I think it's great actually to see more retinaldehyde products on the market, because it takes out potentially an extra step. It's also giving more choice to the consumer. And I think that is also a good thing, because there are so many retinols that you can find, but actually there are very limited numbers of retinaldehyde products that are out there.
Do you know, it's very interesting. I was talking about it the other day, and actually in America, and I'm trying to remember, it wasn't Eucerin, but it was a brand priced like Eucerin who had a retinaldehyde. And it blew my mind, because here we have to pay loads of money for them. I mean, Medicaid are a perfect case in point. Love their products, but they're very expensive. Yeah. And one of my followers in America said, oh, we can get retinaldehyde in, and I can't remember the brand, but I will find it. But it was something, it was like the equivalent of Nivea, and it blew my mind that obviously the technology had trickled down and it had become available. So I think 2021 will be the year of the retinaldehyde.
It's interesting. But then it's interesting also to see, you know,
thank you, my smart followers. It's a vein.
Oh, excellent. Okay, amazing. Well, it's interesting actually, because I think also there are people that are making prescription retinoids. There are companies out there, Dermatica is one of them, that is also making that more budget friendly. So it's also quite interesting to see how the market is playing out, that you're able to purchase a prescription retinoid for cheaper than actually a retinol or a retinaldehyde over the counter. And I wonder if that will change people's perception in terms of what products they choose to use on their skin over the coming years.
I think Dermatica has changed the game dramatically.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. So for those that don't know, Dermatica, and it feels weird me discussing this in front of you, but Dermatica is an online service where you can get access via a portal to clinical dermatologists. There are GPs and house residents and all that sort of stuff as well, but essentially there was a time when you could get prescription retinoic acid from a GP. Now you have to go to a dermatologist. We discussed this last time we did a live. It's still incredibly difficult in the UK to get access to a dermatologist, so this is an online consultation. But it's very interesting that it's very interesting though the conditions they treat. So they treat, just as we said at the beginning of this live, they treat acne, they treat melasma, they treat hyperpigmentation, they call it aging, I call it advanced sun damage. But actually they don't treat any of the dry skin conditions. So they don't treat eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, or any of those conditions at all.
Yeah, but you know though, I suspect that again, it comes down to the fact that the majority of people will seek attention for the top three things that you've said. So I think that's probably a business decision that's been made. But you know, I think it's interesting. I think it's very interesting that you can get these very powerful products for actually a pretty reasonable price point.
It's $24.99 plus postage and packaging a month, which is I mean, it's not cheap, but it's affordable in terms of the fact that you could just get a serum over the counter for $24.99, but you're getting clinical strength prescription products. And I also think that moving forward, if the model is a success, I think it will, more people like yourself will work for it, and then you'll get a wider selection of treatments and available for different problems.
I think what's really interesting actually is, so years ago when I first started, my first derm job was in 2005. And back then in the NHS even, we were able to write prescriptions for what we called specials. And specials were like basically a concoction of ingredients that we could just prescribe and not make up, but they were a collection of things that you just couldn't buy or get on prescription. I could choose a little bit of salicylic acid, a bit of steroid, a bit of this, a bit of that, depending on what a patient's condition was. And then specials became really expensive to source from pharmacies. If you wrote a prescription for a special, a patient would end up paying about £300 for it, which no one's going to do. That's ridiculous. But I do wonder if in the upcoming years, what we're going to see is compounding pharmacies making specials where you've got like 10% niacinamide with 10% azelaic acid and 0.01% tret, and a combination that one throws together rather than all of these multiple products that we're currently using.
Because that's exactly what Dermatica does. It compounds each individual month's supply with a list of, I think, about 8 actives. There's adapalene, retinoic acid, niacinamide, hydroquinone.
Benzoyl peroxide are the common ones that they use.
That's right. Yeah. I do think as a model, it's very, very interesting and exciting. And it's something I recommend for people. The only concern I have is that people who don't have problem skin are jumping to them for anti-aging advice. And I always think there's a big jump between what you get over the counter and complying with using what you're getting from them. Like, you know, belt and buckle strength.
Yeah. I think the second thing as well, though, is I think there's often misdiagnosis as well. I think that often I see so many people that think that they have got acne and they've got rosacea. So if you dive in and you suddenly start using a whole load of benzoyl peroxide and a whole load of different or adapalene straight away, that could irritate your skin if you've got rosacea, and it's actually going to make your redness worse. So I think that the diagnosis bit is absolutely key as well, to make sure that you're not being sent down the wrong route of what you think you might have, and then you actually have something completely different.
Somebody was just asking about Dermatica. They do sell to certain EU countries, and they sell in the US as well, but you need to go. I can't remember the list of countries. It's a certain collection. I presume they're just in the process of being, in the UK, they're MRHA compliant. So I'm sure they're just applying for licenses in the relative EU countries. Do home LED masks work? Are they worth the money? Are you a fan of LED full stop?
So there is a role for LED, I think. The place where I put LED into my practice is if I have got patients who are pregnant and they've got something like acne or rosacea, then I think that there is scope for doing blue light, red light, combination light, because it's anti-inflammatory, particularly when you can't actually give people oral medications as a general rule. I also think that there is some benefit after a chemical peel, for example, to give somebody some blue light, because it can help speed up that process of the peeling and the shedding that you might get. I also think there is a big difference between the LED masks that you would buy at home versus an LED mask or LED light that you might be put underneath in a clinic. And the reason for that is purely safety, because when you're at home, for safety reasons, home devices have to be made sure that you're not going to do any damage to your skin or cause pigmentation or damage your eyes or anything like that. Whereas in a clinic setting, it's a medical professional or an aesthetic professional that will do that for you. The treatments are clearly going to be stronger. So I own one of the Lumi lights from back in the day, but one of the acne lights. I've got one. I think if you've got very mild to moderate skin issues, you might find them of benefit, but I think there are better ways that you can spend your money, and they will not be as effective as a clinic treatment.
I created a video with my friend Jo, who's all wide-eyed and loves anything new and exciting, the other day. And I was being very skeptical like you. And I was saying, there's so much money, Jo. And she said, but if you can just use them for 10 minutes every single day while you have your coffee, what you end up with is a nice glow. And suddenly I thought, okay, so you're not actually looking for visible results on lines or wrinkles. What you're liking is just that sudden boost of superficial circulation.
Yes.
And then I said, well, if you can afford it, go for it. But don't expect it to miraculously get rid of your lines or your spots. That's the problem.
That's right.
Did Neutrogena take theirs off the market?
They did. I think there were some safety concerns around it, weren't they? So
I think some of the trials, the clinicals on it look quite good. Again, I didn't do a deep dive on if they were obviously sponsored just by the brand or independent, but
yeah,
I hope they bring it back if the clinicals do work, because I'm sure, like you, just my audience are just a drop in the ocean compared to yours. People who suffer from their skin will try anything. They really will. And they want as much power in their own hands to use at home as possible. So
that's right. And it's very interesting, actually. So even at last year, 2 conferences that I went to, and there was a lot of talk about home devices and how, you know, the consumer does want to take things into their own hands and control it. So I think you're right, actually. We're going to see a lot more home device type stuff that comes out over the next few years, because I think it's what people want.
yeah, I mean, I just think you just want as much power given to the people that are suffering as possible. So, and as much power for things that work.
Yeah.
I'm going to come completely left field here now, because it was a couple of questions which were really important. If somebody has hair loss or hair thinning, should they be seeing you or a trichologist?
Oh, that's a controversial question. I think the answer is there is overlap here. But
Okay.
the one thing I would say is when it comes to medical hair loss, most people don't realize this, but dermatologists are the only specialty that are trained to do skin, hair, and nails. And people don't realize we're experts in hair as well. So from my point of view, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people that are turning to a plant-based diet at the moment. So they're not vegan, but you know, there's a real shift in wanting to eat more plants and vegetables. And when I'm doing their blood tests, so many of them have got low iron levels. And then when you ask the question of like, what's your hair like? A lot of them will say, actually, my hair's thinning a little bit. So it's quite interesting, because there are lots of medical reasons why somebody can get shedding of the hair. Low iron, low B12, low folate, problems with the thyroid gland, diabetes, just to name a few. The point is that if you are suffering with hair loss, the first thing that we want to do is make sure there's no underlying medical condition that we can correct that's causing that. So that would be my first thing. So I think only a derm, well, not only a derm, GP could do that as well, but I think a trichologist may not be able to carry out a battery of blood tests unless, of course, they're working together with a medical doctor. Once you have ruled out there's a medical issue, there are lots of other reasons other than medical problems that things can occur. It could also be due to hairstyles. It could be due to braiding of the hair. There are lots of things that need to be taken into consideration. So I would say the best scenario would be a trichologist and a dermatologist working together. And there are certain hair clinics where they will do that.
Okay. I always say to people, if ever they go to a trichologist, because trichologists can work out really expensive, I say, go to your GP first and get a battery of blood tests.
Blood tests.
And then you can just take the medical information from your GP, who's probably far too busy to worry about your hair, to somebody, either a dermatologist or a trichologist, who will actually then decipher those battery of tests. Yeah. But it amazes me the amount of companies that jump on that bandwagon of promising to solve the 2 most common triggers for people that cause real deep upset, and that is acne and hair loss. It's just heartbreaking, and it annoys me when brands try to do that. So that's why I wanted to ask. So yeah. don't you can go to your GP and you can go to a dermatologist.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Just some really quick final ones before we finish. How do you treat deep, stubborn blackheads?
So actually, if they are very deep and very stubborn, an extraction probably won't get them out. So often what they are macrocomedones, or big blackheads underneath the skin. And there are a number of, I guess, surgical ways you could do it. So one method, for example, is you can use something called a hyfricator. And it's a little device that pops heat and electricity, but you can use it on the blackhead just to pop the skin overlying the blackhead open, and then you might be able to squeeze it out. So you need some kind of physical manipulation, basically, to try and get it out if it's very deep-seated. Sitting at home and squeezing it won't be good, but you might actually need a beautician or a good esthetician or a surgical procedure to try and remove it.
So if somebody was to see you in your practice, do you then work with an esthetician that then carries out all your extractions?
That's right. So if, for example, someone comes to see me with like milia, or they come and see me, they've got lots of blackheads, and they don't want to go down a medical route to sort out the blackheads, then I would certainly recommend they see one of the estheticians at the clinic who can do an extraction. They can pop the little blackheads open. So yeah, I think there's real value actually, and everyone's got their own skill set, and you don't really want to come to me for an extraction. Like, I am not good at extraction. That is not my skill set. I'm very happy to go and have an extraction done, but I am not the person to be doing your extraction. There is a skill to it, and there is an art to it, and it needs to be done by somebody that knows what they're doing. And in this case, I think it is a good beautician or a good esthetician.
Best face wash for acne prone skin. You mentioned some acid ones earlier on, and I think one of the most common questions I'm getting now is people are getting breakouts who aren't used to getting breakouts because of wearing masks quite a lot. Do you have 2 or 3 favorite sort of acid at the end of the day cleansers?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Murad AHA BHA exfoliating. I like the Medicate Pore Cleanse. And then actually, this one's, it's a slightly more basic one, but I quite like the Garnier salicylic acid one, the 3-in-1. So all of those are ones that I have in my own bathroom.
So you're looking for salicylic and an AHA, ideally combined?
Yeah, and the reason being that a lot of people that get spots or breakouts often get staining afterwards. So the salicylic is good at kind of breaking up the oil production, but then the AHA is good at then fading the mark that's been left behind.
Okay. Have you noticed an increase in people coming in with any marks from, or is it a little bit sort of hyped at the moment, that maskne? Love a journalist word.
Do you know, what I would say is, it's definitely a thing, but the thing is, female adult acne has always been around the lower part of the face as well. So it becomes really difficult to tease out at the moment whether life is really uncertain still. It's a bit weird at the moment. A lot of people are stressed, understandably so. So are they just getting a natural flare of their female adult acne, which would affect this part of the face anyway, because life is a bit weird? Or is it because they're wearing a mask? So yes, I'm seeing more of it. Can I 100% attribute it to a mask and not just other factors? I'm not sure.
What would you apply at night on it? Would it be a BHA? Would it be a salicylic?
A salicylic acid, yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of them around. Or if you're getting an area that's affected, then a BHA toner, and you can just use it across the area.
Do you have a favourite or not really?
I quite like the Paula's Choice BHA toner. I like the Ordinary's 2% salicylic acid toner. And then directly onto spots, if I'm not using prescription products onto my spots, then what I'll often use is the Kiehl's Blue Spot Corrector.
Okay. And finally, because you're so good at doing this, and most people do not know, go onto Anjali's feed and have a look at her pictures where she doesn't wear makeup. Foundation and concealer that you love, that you wear, that is non-comedogenic. Okay,
so I wear a mixture of 2 products normally. What I do is I mix a 50-50 mixture of Vichy's Dermablend 3D and NARS Tinted Moisturizer, because the Dermablend 3D lasts all day, but it's quite thick and it can look a bit kind of mask-like if you leave it on. But if you dilute it down with the NARS Tinted Moisturizer and put it on with a brush, it's got a really lovely consistency, so it spreads nicely, but it stays put all day. So, and it gives really high coverage. So I use that, and then I will always use the NARS Creamy Concealer on top. And like, I would not be seen without concealer I carry in my handbag. When I leave the house, concealer goes with me.
Finally, just quickly, somebody mentioned the zinc oxide argument for pigmentation, which directly affects BAME people. Have you managed to find any good zinc oxide products that you're liking, and do you think it's worth adding in if you're prone to hyperpigmentation?
So I actually think that if you're prone to hyperpigmentation, your iron oxide is more important. So you want to go for a mineral sunscreen anyway, but iron oxide, really, if you look at the clinical data, is probably the best ingredient to prevent melasma in all skin types and hyperpigmentation in the darkest, the olive tone skin, black and Asian skin is probably what I would say. So what iron oxide sunscreens do I like? I mean, again, the problem is the darker your skin, the less it sits well with your skin, if you know what I mean. It still leaves a funny complexion. So the day that somebody makes an effective tinted sunscreen that is mineral based with iron oxide that is suitable for black skin, they are going to make a fortune.
So far, have you found anything with iron oxide in it at all? Every so often in America, I see these pigment drops, these iron oxide pigment drops being mixed into SPFs.
Yeah.
Normally, actually, interestingly, by Black or Asian dermatologists who know their stuff. But I can't seem, I was doing some research, I can't seem to find anything good to use in the UK at the moment.
So I think the Avenclenance, the new one, that's got iron oxide in it. The Bioderma Photoderm M has got iron oxide in it. And then the Neostrata Physical Fusion, I'm pretty sure, has got iron oxide in it as well.
Okay.
So those are good starting ones if hyperpigmentation or melasma actually is a concern as well.
Okay. And that iron oxide is not technically an SPF, so it doesn't have an SPF rating, does it? So
that's correct.
Yeah. So are they SPFs that you've recommended to me rather than foundations that you put on top of SPFs?
So those are specific SPFs. So they're mineral-based SPFs and they've got iron oxide, which is not technically acting as an SPF.
I know. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think, just as I was saying that retinaldehyde will have a year in 2021, I feel like iron oxide is going to be the hot thing that you and I are going to be discussing next summer as well.
I suspect so.
Yeah. Right. So we are going to come back for part 3 and we are going to discuss all things dry skin. If I can get Anjali back next week or the week after, I will. But you've got to realise that most of the time she's actually helping real people with real problems, real patients. Just quickly, you're going to hate me. Hold your book up again. So it's called Skin Bible, and it was published by Skincare Bible. It's published by Penguin. It's just that will answer lots of questions in case you, and of course I will save this as an IGTV and I will get you back. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, thank you for having me.
Is your very talented husband somewhere cooking you up an amazing gourmet meal?
Dinner with the in-laws tonight, so no.
That's a lot to live up to though. Your husband cooks the most amazing gourmet food.
That's great. I don't have to do any cooking. Cooking is not my forte.
Everybody's saying thanks, Anjali. Thank you, and I'll get you back soon. I'll save this. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.